If you're enjoying our content, make sure you like, share, and follow. Share the videos with others. Sign up to our exclusive GCSE English language masterclass where we'll prepare you to get you to a grade 9. So today we're looking at question 5, which is worth 50% of your language paper 1. So this is the creative writing element. So before we get into it, we want to highlight some key aspects of the mark scheme. In order to get into the top end of the mark scheme, you need to make sure that your writing is convincing and compelling for the audience. So it needs to be written like a descriptive piece, like a story opening. And what you should be aiming for is planning your responses before you start writing so that you've got the best piece of writing planned out. So it should be really matched to the purpose, which they've mentioned here in the mark scheme. Extensive and ambitious vocabulary. So it's important not to learn new vocabulary before, but really try to stretch your vocabulary by using the best words. So you want to avoid really simple words, and that again can be established through your planning. You also want to have sustained crafting of linguistic devices. What that means is throughout your writing, you have well thought out devices. So you want to avoid things like he ran fast like a cheetah. It needs to be really well thought out. And you don't need too many of these devices. But what I always recommend and suggest is use a lot of imagery, use a lot of sensory language. This is at the heart of creative writing, and this is what you really want to establish throughout your writing. You also need to make sure your organization is at the top. So structural features need to be ever present. So try to use short sentences, fragments deliberately, semicolons where you can, incorporating a range of convincing and complex ideas. So it shouldn't just be you just describing something and telling the reader what is happening. You really want to describe everything in detail, even if it's describing small things in detail, really building up the imagery, that description. That will get you rewarded with a lot of marks. You need to have paragraphs fluently linked, and it needs to be clear. So think about a clear beginning, middle, and end to your story. When we go into AO6, so remember, you get up to 16 marks for your spelling, punctuation, and grammar. And what you've got here, your sentences need to be secure and accurate. So you really need to think and check over your ideas at the end. Check for any errors that you might have made. So make sure everything is accurate. Wide range of punctuation. So that means using full stops, commas, semicolons. If you want to add a bit of dialogue, that's great. But only add it if it contributes something to the meaning of your answer. So again, the full range of appropriate sentence forms get you into the top band, which is level 4, which is up to 16 marks. Standard English has to be used consistently, and where it says complex grammatical structures. So think about how you start your sentences as well. It shouldn't just be there and he. Really make it flow. Connect one sentence to another one. Think about the length of your paragraphs as well. High level of accuracy in spelling, including ambitious vocabulary. So I always suggest don't learn new words just before you're doing the paper. Use the words that you've got already, know how to spell them, use them in the right context. Because if you just learn this additional jargon and just throw it in, these big words, they don't really add much to your marks. It needs to be crafted really thoughtfully and skillfully, and that can be done through practice. And if you look here again, just like we mentioned in the previous for 805, extensive and ambitious vocabulary comes up again. So again, it's important to use these in your writing. And I'm going to show you 3 quick examples that are grade 9 levels, just to give you a bit of inspiration. So if we look at the first one, so this came up a few years ago, and it's about writing a description about this picture. So we've got a train, we've got the water, we've got the houses. There's lots of different focus points that we can describe. It's as though the water is really attacking this train. So we could talk about the force of that. So I start off here. The silence was shattered tremendously. Everything that was secure had now been dismantled. the giant centipede. So I've got the metaphor of the train and I'm comparing it to a giant centipede. Yeah. So I've got imagery as well. Charged through. So I could have just said it traveled through. So charged really meant thinking about your word choices and clutched its passengers into its embrace. Then I've got the semicolon. Grasping them away from security into the abyss. A chaos decorated by the force and destruction, dismantling the forces of peace and serenity. So I've really got a clear focus point, and I'm trying to use vocabulary to really emphasize the meanings. The words that I use are quite regular in what we use when we speak. So I'm not just learning additional jargon and trying to fit it in. So really think about the idea that you're trying to establish. This idea of peace and serenity being destructed and dismantled and broken away, that was inspired by the image. So this is how I might start off my piece of writing and then continue it. So it's very important to plan. Let's look at example 2. So this came up again recently. Describe a marketplace as suggested by the picture. So when we're looking at a marketplace, we've got so many different focus points. We've got the customers, the sellers, we've got fish, we've got the meat, we've got the people. So there's so many different things that I can really hone in and zoom into and describe with imagery effectively. So this is how I started. And if you look at the image, you'll see this abundant range of colors. The swarm of colors littered the horizon, minuscule colors being pulled in every direction, people rushing around impulsively looking for the bargain of the century. So I was trying to have a bit of fun with this. The market sellers weighing up their profits when their eyes gaze upon these poor souls racing around like children in a sweet shop. So I really thought out my simile here. I'm describing the people as poor souls. They're rushing around looking for this bargain of the century. That's what a market scene looks like when I think about it and when I envision it. These shoppers had descended into the lion's den. And what I mean by that is they've gone in, they're trying to buy something, but again, they can be influenced to buy something that they don't need. That's why they've entered into the lion's den as though they're being hunted by the sellers. They're ready to be pounced upon by the predators that stood silently. So we've got a bit of metaphor, personification, observing diligently. Then I've got the semicolon. So the focus point here is on what I see in the actual scene. So this idea of people walking around and being attacked by the shopkeepers, and they're just watching them closely. So coming back to the shopkeepers, because this is my focus, they're waiting for the opportune moment to strike. To gain a customer's money was the ultimate prize. To seize the customer's money was like taking their soul and trading it for gold. So over here, I'm addressing the mentality of the sellers, and I'm describing how the people within the market, how they're being subjected to this pressure of buying things. So when you're describing these moments, really think about your narrative, your sequence. What is it that you want to describe? Put yourself in the scene of the image that they're giving you and then describe it. So when I wrote this, I was thinking about my own experiences of a marketplace in foreign countries like Morocco, Marrakesh, really describing the mentality, the energy within this market and trying to bring it into my writing. And I always say, try to make your first paragraph the best one, filled with a lot of imagery, so that you've really got that clear focus and you're impressing the examiner from the first minute and persuading them to put you into that first band.